thank you, Rob, for the opportunity to share with folks, and thank you for coming out in such terrible weather. The Center for Learning in Action has the charge here on campus to provide support for experiential learning in the curriculum and extracurricular community engagement. We do that work, the learning by doing out in the field, especially in the wider community. We do that work through running a series of around 30 programs, many of them in the local public schools where students can teach, tutor, and mentor in elementary, high school, independent schools, a wide range of opportunities. We also support programming that's run by students, programming by at least 20 student groups annually who do work ranging from refugee advocacy, book groups at the local jail, work in the community in all respects, sometimes leading discussion groups around books in public schools in Pittsfield where there are challenging issues with respect to racial relations. We help students like the Jewish Association go out and run a special Hanukkah book event where they arrange for gifts of books to children in local schools and then go into those same classrooms and talk about the traditions of Hanukkah, teaching kids who might not get exposed to those kinds of cultural opportunities. So we also think in terms of a wide spectrum of opportunities and want to make sure that both in the curriculum and outside the curriculum, students have opportunities to work in at least a dozen action areas. And those areas include all the ones you might think of as reasonable: arts and culture, education, community and economic development, science and the environment, social services, at-risk youth, so a wide range. I haven't even given you the entire list. That information is available on our website. But we work with students and faculty, and as you might imagine, it's easy work in some respects. There's a lot of it, but it's easy because of the energy that the students bring to campus. They're not just hungry to learn, they're hungry to use what they learn. And so our charge is to make sure that those opportunities exist. What's exciting, and what Rob referred to, is the fact that we have so many great enterprises on campus, departments, programs, other centers, and you're going to hear from the folks, the Davis and the Zilkha Center, about the kind of work that they're doing too. We partner very closely with them, and in just last night and the day before, there have been some wonderful panels with experts coming to talk about issues like environmental justice. And already the group of us are scheming about how we're going to take advantage of these folks who say they'd be willing partners for our students so that we can line up fieldwork opportunities that would exist through courses, where they could work in communities as far away as Pensacola, Florida, down in New Orleans, where there are frontline challenges that folks are facing, but they really could use some brains, some help. And our students are, once they're guided through faculty and through centers like ours, the Davis Center and the Zilkha Center, students are in a strong position to get those experiential learning opportunities that go farther than just the reading of the stories or the issues in the classroom. The challenge is to give them some meaty opportunities to work through some of the struggles side by side with the organizations that are facing them on the front lines. And we do a lot of that work in this region. As I mentioned, education is a big area. But we do that work in terms of financial literacy. The last example I'll give you, and go into a little bit more detail, is a program that was started well over 10 years ago, the Purple Valley Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program, which is both a course and a volunteer program. Students learn during winter study about the issues of poverty and poverty policy, such as the Earned Income Tax Credit. They become certified through an IRS training program that we manage, where they are literally getting certified as IRS volunteer income tax assisters, and then at the end of winter study, they do a little bit of volunteering. Usually, if they do that and they've taken their test, they do that in lieu of writing a paper, which is always very popular. Do the work instead of write the paper, but they've done plenty of work over the January term. And then they volunteer, and pretty much all of them volunteer throughout the spring term in one way or another to work with the clients in North Adams and in this region to do their taxes. And these are low-income folks who would otherwise have to pay substantial money to income tax preparers $200, $300, sometimes as much as $500 by the time they get through, and instead the work is done for them for free. Our students learn on the front lines the budgetary challenges that low-income people face. They learn in economic terms about how people make their trade-offs in terms of really difficult decisions where no decision is optimal, but they do the best they can. And our students get the chance to help them on the front lines, keeping their information confidential, but then problem solving with them and with another team of people that are all doing this work, sometimes volunteers who've gotten trained separately from the wider campus community. And some students have said that the experiences there and the hug from a client has been more meaningful to them than any A they got at Williams. So it's that mix of learning, that chance to take the knowledge they learn in an economics course, a public finance course, but to go the next step, learn more about public policy on the front lines. And the faculty, we have a rotating team of faculty who teach this course with me, I think about 6 of them, many of them tax policy experts, but excited also about helping their students see how the world is changing on the front lines. And they, in turn, as faculty, going in and doing some of the same kind of preparation work in taxes, are also getting a sense of how the world is changing, in many cases faster than the research has been able to keep up, especially in recent years with a lot of tax policy change. So that's only one example of what's going on. I'm not going to give you any more. You can ask questions later, and I can tell you more about what our office does in terms of all this programming. And I've got a lot of literature I can share, as well as refer you to our online summary material. But I'll hand it off to Tatiana.
She did all of that without notes. That is not going to be the experience that y'all have with me. So my name is Tatiana McInnis. I'm the Associate Director of the Davis Center, and that's the Intercultural Center here on campus. And what that means is we think a lot about enhancing the lived experience of students on campus. And we do so through providing holistic care, so whatever students might need. But we also do a lot of data collection to think about how students are living and breathing and feeling here on campus. And one of our main objectives and missions, and how I like to articulate it, is we help folks listen to and learn with each other with attention to cultural difference. And we have an amazing team of people who have incredibly different backgrounds to do that. So I have a background, my PhD is in English, and I did research on diversity and anti-Blackness in Miami. We have 2 assistant directors right now. So Bilal Ansari, who's a spiritual leader who has a background in activism and just being a wholesome, wonderful person. I think that that's important. Cecilia Desid is another assistant director. Her background is in environmental justice, and she brings that in the partnership that we have with the Zilkha Center. And then Shauna Patterson-Stevens, who's our director, her background is in higher education. And so we have a really well-rounded team to think about issues of difference from a variety of different perspectives. Our office is housed under the Office of Institutional Diversity and Equity, and to give a sense of the difference between our offices, so OIDE, so the Office of Institutional Diversity and Equity, does a lot of policy work on campus, and we think a lot about social and cultural programming on campus. And in order to do this, we develop and deliver trainings on social identity, on privilege, on LGBTQIA life, and microaggressions, and countless others to sort of round out the experience that people have on campus, and we deliver those for staff, faculty, and students. We are also piloting and part of the Staff Diversity Initiative. So what that means is whenever there's a vacancy on campus, anyone who's on the search committee for that vacancy has to consult with our office or OIDE to make sure that we are recruiting from a diverse pool of candidates and make sure that we're building the capacity for diversity on campus. So we're very, very busy. In terms of more of our student-facing work, we oversee, advise, and fund the Minority Coalition, and that's an umbrella organization of about 21 student groups, and those are student affinity groups. And so the Black Student Union, Queer Student Union, Hindu Student Association, those kinds of groups, we work with them to build out funding or to build out programming and anything that they sort of need, whether it's as big as bringing a speaker to campus or as small as we would like to have food that tastes good. Where can we find that nearby? The main objective for the Minority Coalition is, as the title suggests, building coalition among our students, but also making sure that students from all backgrounds feel that they are represented and have safe spaces here on this campus, and the Davis Center serves as that safe space for a lot of students. We serve on countless committees to shape the first-year experience for students. We serve on countless research committees, like I mentioned earlier, to think about the experiences that students are having in the classroom and beyond the classroom. We hire students, so we have our community builders that actually actually partner with the eco-advisors, or we're hoping to partner a little bit more with the eco-advisors out of the Zilkha Center. And they lead workshops for their peers, they help us develop programming, and they also act as ambassadors for spaces on campus that we can't get to. So they talk to faculty about the work of the Davis Center, but they talk to students at parties and in different social spaces that we're not in about the issues that we engage at the Davis Center. And I think, just to echo some of what Paula said, we partner extensively with all units on campus to make sure that we're contributing to the holistic experience of students on campus. And I think those are some of the larger scale, kind of cerebral things that we do, but we also do things as small as ordering food for folks, providing transportation on and off campus, whether it's for educational purposes or just to get away for a little bit. And lots of really interesting and holistic conversations. So in the span of a couple hours, I can have students come in and talk to me about coming out, about a frustration with a paper, about a class that's not going so well, about their careers. So we really just try to be a resource for students for conversation and everything else that they might need. Yeah, I will stop there and welcome any questions at the end, and I'll turn it over to Mike.
Thanks, Tatiana. First, I want to say it's an honor to sit up here with my colleagues, Tatiana and Paula. The Davis Center and CLIA, the Center for Learning and Action, do great work across campus, and centers and offices all across campus are always trying to think about how we can partner and create better experiences for students and increase our impact together. And so I mean, even as we were getting mic'd up in the back, we were talking about things that we can do for winter study in just a few months or in upcoming years. I'm Mike Evans with the Zilkha Center. The Zilkha Center for Environmental Initiatives is the campus sustainability office. So we're working to make the college more sustainable. And then everyone says, what does that mean? You're building lots of buildings. How is that more sustainable? So we push to integrate sustainability into the college more to meet our commitments that we've made as a campus. We sit on all the building committees, making sure that sustainability is integrated from the very start of those projects, thinking about how there can be net zero emissions, no new emissions for new buildings. And we're an office of 3. We're very small, like these offices as well. So we're thinking about how can we increase our impact? How can we integrate sustainability into all the departments across campus? How can we think about students' behavior change? And some of our goals are educating students to be more sustainable on campus, to take that back with them to their communities and to take it forward into their careers. So we hire a number of students. We have about 18 interns during the school year. And this past summer we had 9 interns in the summertime. And those students are celebrating successes in campus sustainability, also questioning what we're not doing well enough and pushing us forward. So some of those examples of the internships that we have going right now, we have a few real food interns who are pushing our dining services and working with them to make sure that we buy more sustainable food, thinking about local, ecologically sound, which is organic and other things, fair trade, and humane. We have students a healthy building materials intern who is actually working with a local consultant that's working to think about making sure that our purchases in the built environments are healthier and more sustainable for people and the environment in their extraction, production, and when we throw things away, when our buildings come down. We have garden interns working in garden spaces across campus. We have students working on a whole slew of things. In the past, we've had renewable energy interns that have actually worked to do some research and work with consultants to lay the foundation for the new solar facility that we've worked with. We've partnered with other institutions that's going to be built up near Bowdoin College that's going to cover 80 to 90% of our purchased electricity. So that's working towards our climate action goals and our campus emissions goals as well. A few other programs that we run. Right now, we're gearing up for Winter Blitz, which is a home weatherization community service program. Our student leaders train other students, and they go into the community and weatherize people's houses. It's putting door sweeps on the bottoms of doors, putting window kits up, caulking around cracks, to increase the thermal comfort for families, to lower energy bills, and to reduce emissions overall. So we work with CLIA on that project as well. And there are a number of other programs that we work on. Root, our first-year orientation program, we partner with the Davis Center on this eVenture program that thinks about sustainability, social justice, and identity, and welcoming students to college and saying, we're so glad you're here, let's explore these issues together. So we're trying, as Paula mentioned at the beginning, we're trying to give students wonderful co-curricular activities to supplement and complement the work they're doing in the classroom, and then point them back towards the classroom once they have taken that theory, come and taken some action either in the community or on campus to make change, and then sending them back to the classroom or on to their post-college careers with both the theory and the hands-on experience that will make them more well-suited to life after college. Yeah. So I'll stop there. We're happy to take questions now. And I'll actually, as you're thinking of your questions, some of the other things that we do with students are we take them to conferences. So last year, there's an annual Sustainability in Higher Education conference that I presented about the Root program, our first-year orientation program, with one of our Root leaders at the student conference. This summer, we did a collaborative internship with students at Smith and Amherst, thinking about, based on this book called Drawdown, thinking about how to draw down global emissions. And these students worked together to think about the regional drawdown and what our colleges could do to think about that climate change is serious and we need to act now, and what can our colleges do and what can the region do. Also this week, our Real Food interns said, this is great that we're learning about how to make change on campus, but we want to learn from other colleges as well. Mike, can you put us in touch with our peers? And so this week we've been planning students from Hampshire, Smith, Amherst, and UMass Amherst are going to have a video conference call in the next few weeks to share best practices. And as you probably know, our student groups and students on campus really take a lot of initiative. So sometimes our student groups, we are working alongside supporting our Real Food student organizations who are working to make change. A few years ago, there was a 50% reduction in industrial beef that the student group took the lead on, and we supported them, and we, conferred. But it's really amazing what student groups do, and we work. All of our offices work to make sure that student groups, the interns that we are overseeing, and our offices are working in concert to make sure that we're pushing the college ahead in good directions. I bought you a few minutes to think of your questions.
I can start with Rob.
Yeah, Rob.
Rob's got a question.
So it just occurred to me now that each of you, in your own ways and often together, are actually paid by Williams College to kick Williams College in the rear end occasionally, which is such an interesting place to be. That's not to say that that's the entire project, but Paula, you're actually in the business of reminding the people that run Williams College that we're part of a larger community that has...
We're institutional citizens.
Exactly. Tatiana, you're sometimes in the business of helping reshape the habits, institutional habits that have been hanging around maybe longer than they are effective for a much different student, staff, and faculty population. And Mike, you're reminding all of us, including with your water bottle over there, that there are all sorts of large and small habits that are changed. So I just am interested as a fellow Williams employee, just a couple of examples of how you navigate that.
Well, it is a challenge. It can be a challenge at times. We're lucky that the leadership of the institution is happy to be, I guess, a learning lab. And I can give you an example of a situation that I'm pretty pleased about that we're offering to students right now. And it's because the college does see that there are problems that sometimes would benefit from students taking the challenge and trying to help us solve them. And one of those is dining services came to us a little while ago. They have a policy, an approach that's not necessarily, I don't know how common it is, but there's this food safety certification that technically managers of food operations are required to have. But at Williams, Dining Services has said, for the sake of food safety across the campus, they want all their dining services employees to be Serve Safe certified. But and they have a process where they train them when they first hire them. But some people are having trouble passing the test. They don't tell people who get here who don't pass the test you can't stay, but the commitment is to get everybody certified. And because they have a number of people for whom English is a second language, a number of folks that might have some literacy challenges or some learning disabilities, but still fine employees and doing a good job, the challenge is to try to help them pass this test. And so we are offering the opportunity for students to do that over winter studies, so the test can be offered again at the end of January for these folks, but also the chance for some students potentially to get paid to do this work, to be consultants. What's really exciting about this is it goes way beyond Williams, and that's what Dining Services and the administration appreciates. There's a chance for Williams students to help make it easier for people to understand food safety issues, things like which bacteria gets into beef and which gets into shrimp or whatever, the kind of stuff that's hard for anybody to remember potentially, but to look for mnemonic devices, to identify symbolic ways to help people understand. And Dining Services even saying that they will agree to, if students come up with infographics or information that's going to make it easier for people to remember this stuff, that they'll look into ways to take the back rooms, the prep areas, and have some of this stuff posted there. So Dining Services is saying, please be consultants for us. Do some research, do some creative curriculum development. And we have so many students who do creative curriculum work already, who develop curriculum in science in the schools over the summer, that they appreciate that our students have the talent and the potential. So we're particularly excited because it's a problem that will be solved here, but then it will be looked at materials or curriculum that can be used in other community organizations. Maybe there'll be videos that get created that help people understand these serve-safe elements. I'll tell just the quick thing. In studying the manual a little bit myself and being a little bit surprised, apparently there was an outbreak of baked potato salad in some community, some organization someplace, and it turns out there's a greater danger of bacteria in baked potatoes after they've been sitting for a while than there is with regular boiled potatoes. Something about the timing of it all, but who would have thought of that? So the idea of these sort of uncommon situations and having students take a look at those, use their creative talents, it's so clear that the talent is here, and it's not going to take that much. So to excite these students and have them literally create new curriculum that they will own, they will be the authors of, and then the college will use that, but then we'll make sure that it gets used in wider ways and can benefit the larger community, since we all should be food safe. So that's the kind of thing that, it's true that it's extra work for Dining Services. They've agreed that they will, their staff, if they take the training from these folks, the experimental training, will get paid, that time will be paid, but also that their staff will participate in focus groups for the folks developing this curriculum. So it'll be a model for the way to develop curriculum, and a department that's saying we'll put in the extra effort and the extra money. And that's where Williams is stepping up in ways that I suppose some institutions might have a harder time. It's not always easy, but we have the support of the institution for that because they see the value. Everybody sees the value, and the leadership at the top sees the value. So that's an example from our shop that I'm particularly excited about now.
It's such a good question, Rob. I think it's very easy for me to navigate those tensions because my primary focus is always the wellness of the students. And so one of the ways, and I think this is building off something that both Paula and Mike have said, we just have really good leaders as students, really innovative and really kind of like go-getters as students. And so a lot of my work ends up being navigating the institution for myself and understanding how it works and just pushing students in the right direction. So a lot of what we've been doing now with the initiative to establish Asian American Studies on campus, which is an active conversation that we're having, is, the students didn't need us to articulate why that matters or what, we just needed to tell them, I think these are 3 strategies that you can use, and these are particular audiences that you might want to target in terms of initiating these conversations. So it's a lot of just like organizing, really, but organizing in the way that's kind of like, you know, here's a blueprint, and I know that you have the energy and the initiative to do it. And so I think it's just understanding the institution and giving students a roadmap to push it in the direction that they'd like to see it, and how it can best serve them in the time that they're here, but also because of how enamored the alum is, like, beyond the time that they're here. I think that ends up being a lot of our role, for sure, at the Davis Center.
Yeah, it's interesting to be hired. I mean, just as Rob said, your job is to change the college, to make it more sustainable, to make equity, to make it a more equitable place, an inclusive place. And everyone's nominally on board with sustainability and equity and inclusion. But how do we help bubble that up and make that a higher priority? And there are trade-offs. We're always talking about trade-offs and how do we as a community think about those things. I mean, adding on to what Tatiana said about helping students navigate the system, like, how do you make change? So you're not necessarily learning that in classes necessarily, but we're helping students think about making change at this small institution, and it's hard, and it takes a long time, and often students get frustrated because they can make some of the change, but maybe not all of the change in their 4 years here. So part of our job is to help tie together, like, help them think about the longer arc of what's going on and saying, that's fine, that's the longer arc. That doesn't mean don't do it, and maybe it can be quicker than it has been done in the past. But it's not always clear how to make change. I mean, we are always trying to figure out how to do that. And Williams is a well-resourced institution. We're a wealthy institution. Where are those resources allocated? And are they allocated to this pot, or more for sustainability, or more for equity and inclusion? Maybe that's people power, and maybe that's solar panels. And how do we as an institution think about that? And we're always trying to take the pulse of and ask people those questions and get students to think about that. Very specifically about real food, everyone's more for more sustainable food. There's always a pushback that, like, you know, sometimes you can trade things out and it's no cost, no additional cost. But sometimes it is an additional cost. And what are our campus's values in terms of maybe making the decision between local food and organic and fair trade and humane? We haven't necessarily had that conversation as a campus. There are lots of wonderful conversations happening, but we're trying to figure out how to have that conversation. And, you know, changing the status quo is disruptive. And so people have been doing things a certain way, and how do we help do the research and talk about it, say, hey, this particular technology or this approach is new and it might not succeed immediately, but how do we experiment with it to make us all better, to increase the well-being of students, faculty, and staff, and to make this college a better place and a leader in this region and in the country and in the world? Yeah, but it's not easy. And there are no clear answers for that. But yeah, every day we're the disruptors, and partnering with folks too. You know, it's wonderful when Rob says, hey, for orientation, we want to think about reusable or water bottles for everyone, or not disposable things. And so it's not just that we are charged with thinking about that, but there are partners all across campus who are being more sustainable and thinking about equity and service all the time, and we are trying to help move those conversations forward.
And modeling the participatory ways to do that kind of work, exactly. So in that sense, the institution is that, as I said, that learning lab. It's also a reminder that it's more complicated than you think. It's usually more complicated than you think. And even allies might step back and say, wait a minute, I'm afraid of the implications of trying this project or that project. So all of that is part of the human experience. Just because we have more resources than other places doesn't mean that those challenges don't exist, but the more students experience working through them, learning, the stronger they'll be when they go out into the wider world to try to address some of those same kinds of challenges. They'll have more tools in their back pocket to help address those problems.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So my name is Jerry Lee. I'm a father of a freshman student. So my daughter told me all the wonderful things about the school. She's very happy with the first experience. But I don't know if you guys are the right people I talk to. And, basically, Because my observation and what my daughter told me about it, I think the food, we are talking about food before, right? So, I have a few meals in the cafeteria, I run around, see how it's going. I think, I don't know if you guys are the right people, again. So the diversity, again, right, about the food, we can have more Indian food, Chinese food, Korean food, also South American food, all the culture, it's part of diversity. So I think, I don't know if it's true, right? In this school, you can do any better on this aspect? So that's my question.
Yeah, that's a great question. Our dining services over the last 10 or 20 years has had lots of, been pushed in lots of directions. More plant-based meals, they have to think a lot about allergens, and they have heard that from students as well. And I think they're doing better over time, but we can continue to do better. There's a program that happens in the spring that's called Recipes from Home, so that you all can send in recipes. Dining will choose 10 of them or whatever and scale them up and serve them at a dining hall, which is really wonderful. And sometimes they keep those recipes in circulation. I'm regularly in contact with dining to think about how we have more sustainable food, more culturally appropriate food, and representing the students that we have at this college that's becoming more and more, that's bringing in students from all over the world, right? And we need to think about that, and how do we do that in a way that that is respectful to all those cuisines, and doing that in a way that makes sense. That's a great question, and something that I know that our students bring up with our dining services, and we do, but we'll continue to do so, and thank you for that comment.
I will echo everything Mike said, and I think for Heritage Months, there's a lot of student groups that partner with dining halls and kind of flesh out recipes and make sure that the kind of Heritage Months are represented in what you get on your plate. But the issue is that it's not consistent, so making it more consistent and not specific to a particular month, but making sure that there's a range of options at all times, and I think that that's something that we can work to build the capacity for.
Sure.
And just like we were talking about with sustainability earlier, how do you make sure it's not an add-on,
right,
and just a Heritage Month, which is wonderful, but it's integrated into the everyday experience and all the meals throughout the course of the year. Yeah.
And we add one other dimension. It's not the dining services, but we've had some experience with students interested, and I've always been interested in cooking and baking, and we do a couple things at the Center for Learning Action. One is when we have reflection dinners, which we haven't done them this past year because of some busyness, but we've had some reflection dinners where we literally made the food together. And so we taught students how to make things like pot stickers. We'd had the vegetarian option and the meat option, but it's been a good experience for some students to make some food, and we've done some things like making Indian curry and things like that as well. And we also have a baking kit that students can use to make some food, usually baked items for delivery, and some equivalent of Meals on Wheels programming that happens on the weekends. And students typically can do that themselves or gather some friends. We have the kit with all the tools and the equipment, and then the students just tell us the recipe, and we buy the food for them and the ingredients, and they can make enough servings for 40 or 50 people where they're going to be delivered. But they usually have to make at least one set of whatever it is for tasting purposes. So it can also be kind of a social thing and an opportunity for students to explore and to kind of have some downtime, but to enjoy making food that they like and that they might miss. So we try to do both things at once.
Yeah, and I'll add one more thing. And I actually think that this goes back to Rob's question of the tension of pushing in the institution while also kind of trying to accommodate student needs. The Davis Center is in the process of thinking about our space, our actual physical space, and either renovating or building a new space. And one of the things that we've made a strong case for is needing multiple kitchens and multiple commercial kitchens that will accommodate the different student groups that we serve, because that is a need that we've heard, that it's not just expecting dining services to accommodate that need, but actually having space wherein folks can cook their own recipes, and we can facilitate trips to Albany, to international markets, and have them just have the kitchen stocked so that students have a space to cook. So I'm like looking at the camera so that we have a document of this conversation and kind of just reifying that we do have this need for students on campus.
And I'm on that building committee and very excited about the extra time that's being taken. I know it's frustrating not to move as quickly as we would all like, but it's really important to do it right. And there are some issues. I know that there's some zoning issues and the like with when you do commercial kitchens and worried about students participating. But when we do it carefully, systematically, and do these things in a strong way, again, there are some students that don't know how to cook. It's kind of important to know how to cook sometimes, right? So we're thinking about those things as a group, and it's very exciting that the college is supporting that time that's being taken to do this right.
And last comment, we're fired up about food, apparently. A good first question. Students can start student groups here. I heard yesterday we have 180 student groups, which is just an unbelievable amount.
It's the largest ever.
Our Eco Advisors program, so we hire some students for particular jobs, the Real Food intern, Healthy Building Materials intern. There are also Eco Advisors who can propose their own projects. It's sort of like a sustainability 101 and propose your own projects. A few years ago, Michael Ding was an Eco Advisor and started Moo Mommy, like umami, but with a cow. That's the name of the cooking, a vegetarian cooking class. That again is not integrated into dining services, but it is. Yesterday they were using the environmental center and making spring rolls, and it is striking that students. It is a wonderful thing that students learn here, inside and outside of the classroom, that they feel empowered and they can make change on campus. They can create programs, and we have students pushing and nudging and asking those same questions of our dining services, but also about food in the northern Berkshire County, and I think that's very positive. So we can have a non-food question or another food question if you like. Yes.
I have a question. It's kind of the reverse question, it's not a food question.
That's okay.
Which is, do you have a segment of students in a student population that in fact does not get out and participate in the kind of activities that you have? Meaning that they're mostly focused on their classroom work, that maybe is underserved by the services that you have. Does that exist? And if so, what are your strategies for reaching into that group of students?
Well, it's kind of hard to say. I think we work hard at reaching as many as we can, and our strategy is usually to try to ask people what their passions are, and then to see how we can help them move forward with those passions. We have a variety of strategies in terms of, we're involved with some of the first year orientation programs. One of the ones that is actually, sorry, I'm going to link back to food, I suppose, but on Thursdays, every Thursday during the semester and during the course of the academic year, we have what we call open office hours. So we're out in Paresky, one of the major dining halls, from about 11:30 to 1:30, and we invite people to stop by to say hello. We don't tell them they have to do anything. We're not telling them they have to get out in the community. We just want them to say hello. And we do things like have a donut competition, a donut taste-off. There's a couple of different, places around here you can buy these cider donuts, and we probably will have one again fairly soon. But we say, come, tell us, vote here. But we also provide other snacks, sometimes fresh fruit at the time of the year when it's not as easy to get.
Who wins the donut contest? What's the best donut?
Actually, well, we only competed with Lakeview Orchard and Apple Barn. And Apple Barn won, but it was very, very close.
Let's do that more frequently.
Okay, yeah, we will. And we literally get hundreds of donuts and say, here you go. But so we try to be out there. We have staff that get out in the community or working with students, but we also have, along like these folks, we tend to have student workers who are helping us. We work a lot with student organizations. We encourage them to invite other folks. We encourage them, frankly, it's back to food again. But the latest exciting new restaurant in the area is the Korean Garden. So students have said, oh, gee, can we get that? Sure, you can get it. So we'll do takeout. And when there's some big meeting or an information session, it will involve dinner. And dinner will involve, just tell us that you're coming and we'll make sure there's enough food. And kids get excited because you don't necessarily get a lot of that kind of opportunity around here. And food often brings people to the table. So along with what the Davis Center does, we try to do those kinds of things and have, the usual literature that goes out and reaching out faculty, staff, anybody we can. And then because we have faculty advisors and all talking with students, I think folks across the campus are thoughtful about the health of each student. So there's always someone who's going to know that student. If it's not the faculty advisor that knows them more than a little bit, there'll be other people around. There's the JA system. So there's an effort to reach everybody and to tag team. If we hear about someone that sounds like they could use the services of the Davis Center, we're going to send them off there. Or we're going to personally, if it's someone who's a little more shy, we're going to personally introduce them to people and say, you should meet Tatiana. Oh, here's Bilal. And we tend to table around the same time, so we do a kind of tag team approach wherever we are on campus. And we're always looking for people, sometimes the ones who are a little more quiet, seem a little more reserved, we'll reach out a little bit more toward them to try to find out what makes them tick, what their interests are, so we can try to match them up. We think of ourselves kind of as matchmakers in general. I think that's true across the campus, that we're all matchmakers to help people.
I will echo everything. It's a multi-front attack, in my estimation. I think we do a lot of different kinds of programming, whether it's dinner, whether it's let's watch a movie together, whether it's us going to guest lecture in classes and touching base with folks in that way, just being visible, throwing different kinds of parties, facilitating different kinds of events. And so I think a lot of this past year has just been working at increasing visibility and thinking about different points of access that we can have with students. I will say that I think that there are demographics of students that we can't touch, but we are aware of that and do a lot of work to sort of partner with faculty and just make sure that folks know that we're a resource that's available to them.
If your question is about like students just doing things on campus or just focusing on their academics, I find that students here are such go-getters that it's more that I have to say, I think you have too much on your plate. Maybe you don't need this internship at the moment. If it's seeking out opportunities through our offices, we are all, the Zilkha Center, and I know the Davis Center and CLIA are always thinking about how do we reach out to students in different ways and get to those students who might not find us otherwise. So, you know, a lot of students are athletes, and so for our Winter Blitz home weatherization program, we go to the Student Athlete Advisory Committee and their student leaders and ask them to promote this community service opportunity as a team building activity to all the athletes. We think that's a win-win across the board. And we think about that in lots of different ways. There's so many opportunities here at Williams, it's almost like students get overwhelmed with them. If you walk around and see the posters, there's so much going on. So we all miss things that we would love to go to because we're trying to make sure that we get, an evening at home with our kids or whatever, right? Or students get some time doing their homework because they could be going to talks every night, doing community service activities all the time. Did that answer your question? Somewhere in there?
Yeah, I think so. I just think I can picture the brilliant student who's admitted to Williams, but maybe has not developed the outgoing skills and the awareness that these programs are there and that they're open to them. And therefore, they might be doing brilliantly in their academic work, but not necessarily getting the benefit of all the things that you're offering. I'm asking, first of all, do you perceive that such students exist? And if they do, how do you feel, what are your strategies for getting out there to reach those students? I think we've had a couple, had some answers to that. That was the nature of my question.
I mean, I think it was mentioned before, but it's the holistic approach. For all first years, they all have junior advisors, JAs, and we communicate through their JAs, and the JAs are saying, let's go out and do something together, or why don't you try this activity? They're doing a lot of checking for the first years, which is wonderful. Thereafter, there are housing coordinators and neighborhood leaders who oversee certain dorms, and they're less actively engaged. It's a newer program, and after your first year, students are like, I got this figured out, I can do it. But they are still also doing a lot of promotion. So it's us seeking people out in Paresky through different communications channels, and it's also these student leaders, and it's great when it comes from their peers saying, have you thought about this? or this.
Sure.
Hey, there's this cool thing happening with food.
Sure. And in our realm, because we're looking for people to get involved in the community, we often say at the very beginning to Frosh, we do all that work, but we also say, you know, okay, we know you're going to settle in and get your work done first, and we don't necessarily want you to take a lot of time because you've got to have your priorities. We respect your priorities, but we're here. Whenever you're ready to engage in the community, know that we're here. So we're always trying to make sure that they have us on their radar, but then we have a strategy to have what we think of as drop-in opportunities. So there's a program called WRAPS, Williams Recovery of All Perishable Surplus, where students can go and help in the dining halls, the prep areas, after hours, take about 40 minutes working with a crew of other people to literally package food that wasn't served that can then be frozen and delivered to various organizations that will serve the underserved. That's 45 minutes. You don't have to do anything. You walk in, no training, and we have students who run that student group who are always out looking for people, and again, working with JAs and saying, how about if you bring some of your folks down, or talking with faculty, inviting staff to come as well. So there is this sense of trying to pay attention to everyone, and I think because of the way the JA system works and because of the approach that we have and the way the deans work, there's a sense of wanting to make sure that everybody's being well taken care of, that holistic sense about each student. And if somebody sees someone that they worry about, there's a good chance that if I see somebody that I notice looks a little bit, you know, like maybe they're a little too quiet or not doing something, I'm going to say to some people, or I'm going to ask around. And we might ask that student themselves, but we probably will ask other people as well. Do you know them? So there's that sense of community and a sense of watchfulness. And I've known plenty of students who've told me, well, I've got this roommate who's got this issue or that issue, and we have people kind of cajoling one another to stay engaged. I'm not saying people are perfect at it, but there is that effort to try to make sure that people are okay. And faculty in their courses do take a serious look. I have a husband who teaches here in political science, and in his course, his practice is everybody in the class has to come see him for 10 minutes. Not with any reason to talk about anything in particular. He just wants to get to know them. And we have a lot of faculty that operate that way. They want to know each of the students in their class and know something about them. And I've known faculty who've said, students don't come to my open office hours. They don't come when I ask them to sign up. They don't. Some faculty, like my husband, say, okay, I'm just going to require you to do it because I want to know who you are as a human being in addition to all the academic work you do. And in those moments, you learn something about them. And I've also heard students say they're too shy to go into an office with a faculty member because they feel like they need to have something to ask or to say or need to be doing well. So when faculty have these strategies and the dean's office has strategies of getting to know the students that are in their charge, I like to think that we're kind of covering the bases, but it's that sense of people wanting to reach out and make sure that everybody's taken care of. We're big enough that I suppose there are probably some strategies that could be looked on and developed, but perhaps Rob White of the Dean's Office can tell us more, or the Dean Samcher, could tell you more later about just the myriad of strategies they have to make sure that students are taken care of.
We're almost out of time, but any last questions?
Actually, I would make a suggestion. It may be beneficial to make, to do some kind of a communal work mandatory. So there's some people, they probably, no matter what you said, they just don't feel like to do. They never have the experience. If you make it mandatory, once a while, once a month, for example, and everyone is doing that, they get that experience. Potentially, it will help them to.
Sir, can you speak into the camera? We want to archive all of these great.
Yes, exactly.
I think, did we catch that? That's right.
Thank you for raising that. That's been discussed on and off, but we are at a moment of opportunity now with the new president inviting folks from the campus community to raise possibilities to talk about the health of the campus community. And my hope would be there are some departments, some majors and programs that do require experiential work to be done. That's for academic credit. There's not that many. There are a few. But I certainly would love to see a discussion about that and the idea that we discuss the possibilities of what kind of requirements there are. And yeah, it makes sense.
Not necessarily academically, obviously they're required to do things already.
Sure.
But
as an extracurricular,
to do some work in the cafeteria or
some other places, you know, on campus or even outside campus. I think, you know, help the community, as you mentioned, help some people doing tax or some other things. I think it may be helpful to make it mandatory. So, you know, for some people, they will never get out to do this kind of thing.
If they weren't pushed.
They get a chance to experience it, and they may very much, you know, feel like, hey, they get a satisfaction from that and learn new perspectives and knowledges and skills.
Well, great, very good point. Absolutely. Thank you. And we'll certainly put it on the agenda. Other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you all for being here.
Thank you. Have a nice weekend.
Yes, what's left of it.